Our specialty at Offshore Citizen, something that we do better than almost anyone else, I at least generally don't run into people who are better at it, is international tax planning. Okay, so it's very, very nuanced to understand the tax rules in all sorts of different countries and figure out how they overlay, etc. This being said, we now have these large language model tools, Chat GPT, etc., that make it way easier to do research on a bunch of this stuff. And when ChatGPT kind of first came out, I think it was around ChatGPT 3, I tried using it to see, hey, like, how good is this thing? Can I get it to kind of automate away a bunch of the consulting that we did? And at the time, it was really bad. I had a particular case where I was doing something based on UK, and it said something about this blacklist. I'm like, that's odd. I'm an international tax expert. I don't know about a blacklist in UK. And so I said, hey, can you provide me with a link to this blacklist? It said, yeah, sure, no problems. Here's a link. And I clicked on it, page not found. I said, hey, it says page not found. They're like, oh, sorry, must have changed. Here's the new one. Clicked on that. That didn't work. I said, no, it's still not working. They're like, oh, sorry, here go this one. I did this like 3 or 4 times. And then I made the comment, I was like, you know what, like, I've never even heard of such a blacklist. Are you sure that this exists? It's like, oh, sorry, no, it doesn't exist. And so that was a bad initial experience. This being said, obviously the LLMs have improved a bunch. And so I'm going to give you an update today on how good are the LLMs today at doing tax planning for you. Should you use them? Should you not? Can that get you away from using an accountant or a lawyer, etc.? So let's dive in and discuss it today. Before we do, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. Thank you for being here. I'm Michael. If you're interested in help with these topics, this is relocating to other countries, this is setting up your business or yourself to minimize your global tax footprint, potentially saving quite a lot compared to what you would in your local country. We have all the kind of nuanced understanding of what happens when you cross borders with companies, with people. It's unfortunately not that straightforward and easy. I always say if it was as easy as setting up a company in BVI where there's no tax, everybody would do it and the tax departments would be out of business. The fact that they are not out of business should tell you that they have rules to prevent that sort of thing. So it is very important to do it properly because you can get into a lot of trouble if you do it wrong. But in certain circumstances, if you can kind of architect your business or your life in the right way, there's a huge amount of opportunity to take advantage of there. And so if you're interested in discussing that or looking at it, send a message through offshorecitizen.net, or you can book a call with me at calendar.com/Michael-Rosmer, link in the description below. So, okay, let's dive in and talk about it. All right, so I have recently gone through and done some fairly extensive analysis of having these LLMs, and I will use multiple of them. So I'll kind of run ChatGPT, Anthropic, sort of Claude, Grok, and Gemini, and sort of throw all the same thing at them and see how they handle it. And I will say, so first of all, they've gotten way, way, way better, okay? So what they were back in GPT-3 or whatever was pretty unusable. It was very dangerous to be going and trying to do that. What they do today is much more on top of it. Is it perfect? It's definitely not perfect, but it is a really great starting point. So, and in fact, sometimes it can just be way better than search. So I'll give you a specific example. We do these global financial strategies for clients. And so this is like 100+ page document that is really, really rigorous, looking at what are the laws that apply to you? What are your objectives? What are the different options based on those things that we might do? Why was one better than the other? And kind of narrow down from this plethora of sort of all the options in the world down to like, what is the best solution for you that is going to save you the most tax, be the most operationally efficient, have the best banking, the best payment processing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So kind of accounting for all these multivariant factors, this is going to give you the best endpoint result. And when we're doing that, a big part of what we do is we go through and we cite all these different sources, because one of the things that becomes a problem is how do you know that what we are saying is true? You can go out and you can hear all sorts of people's opinion all over. And this was, as I was fairly early on in this business, kind of the first 3 years or so, it would come up, right? Of like, how do you know who is accurate and who is not? And the beautiful thing, the thing that I appreciated kind of diving into understanding law, is that you actually have a source of truth you can go to, which is law and case law. And so the way that you should figure it out is not so-and-so said and so-and-so said. That doesn't mean anything. You can have 1,000 people tell you something. It can still be wrong. What matters is, can you show me in the actual law and the actual case law what it is that is accurate, so that you can go and you can build up from there. And so when we're doing that, we have to kind of source all these different documents, which would include, in this particular example that I'm talking about, documents from other countries. So we were doing some stuff for a client related to Panama, and Panama's laws are, of course, in Spanish, and they're not actually that accessible. So some countries, the law is like very accessible. You can really easily Google it, you pull it up, you're like, okay, Internal Revenue Code, such and such, off you go. It brings up Cornell University or whatever, and you can go and you can read it, and then you can search around the case law, etc. Canada's quite good. In some cases, the law is quite simple if you're talking about, for example, someplace like New Zealand, and so it's much easier to read. In the case of Panama, getting to the actual law was fairly difficult, and so we were going through doing this, one of the people on our team and myself, and I was like, let me ask ChatGPT if it can pull up this link, because we can't find the link for this stupid law. And ChatGPT was like that, came back super quick, super easily, and we were able to pull it up and then kind of cite the exact law and the particular paragraphs, etc., for this given incident, which is great. So wonderful tool, right? Very, very wonderful. Where does it fall short? It falls short in two different areas that I have noticed. The first one is you really need to know how to prompt it. So it's okay if you just give it information in general. It's definitely not bad. It's not going to completely lead you astray. And it's definitely going to bring up things that you probably are not aware of, which is also good. What I've noticed is that, it's much better if I get on a call with somebody's local lawyer or accountant or something like that, because I can explain a concept in the language that they understand. If I try to tell a client, here's the concept, and the client goes and tells the lawyer, the client doesn't have the deep understanding of the particular laws that you're talking about. And so things sort of get lost in translation, right? And so, for example, I might know to prompt certain things about CFC rules, right? And the LLM just might not come up with CFC rule stuff on its own. We might talk about diverted profits tax or general anti-avoidance or transfer pricing rules. And then you get into like very precise nuances of those. Like if you're talking about transfer pricing rules, one of the interesting things is that the definition of what a related party is will vary from country to country. So in some places, a sibling is not considered to be a related party. In other countries, it is. So you have like lots of these fine little nuances. And if you can go and you can query the LLM properly, it tends to be a pretty good tool. I think that lawyers will suffer a lot from LLMs because you can just ask it a ton of stuff and get most of your answers from that LLM. It is like pretty good. The issue is if you don't know how to prompt it, you may be lulled into a false sense of confidence that is inaccurate. And usually if you can kind of go back and say, well, what about this? Then it will correct itself. The other thing that happens is there are certain cases where there's like subtleties of interpretation that become problematic. And as I was kind of going through playing around with it very recently, we were dealing with a subtle issue in Canadian tax law. And the issue with this particular part of Canadian tax law is that there are some seemingly contradictory sections of the law. And because of that, the immediate response of the LLM was like, oh yeah, you can get away with this. And then you start to like dig in and you're like, well, hang on, what about this? And as you like attack it from a bunch of different vectors, you eventually find it breaks down. And it will, by the way, admit that, right? Like it's not going to insist that it's the way that it is. Eventually, it's kind of like, okay, I was wrong. Yeah, this thing here doesn't include that particular exception. Actually, in this particular case, it's sort of the opposite, that the exemption is very narrowly defined. And if you're outside of that narrowly defined exemption, then this kind of ability to get away with what would be a very cool tax loophole otherwise doesn't work. And so it's one of these cases where if you don't know enough to like dive into it, it will come up with some false interpretations of that information. And you can get to the right answer, but if you stop too early, it can give you something that's false. And that false information then can again lead you astray. And so what is the issue? Well, the issue fundamentally is that if you make a mistake in tax, it's not like a protection that you're like, oh, well, the LLM told me. No, it doesn't work that way. The tax department's going to come and say you were taxable and you didn't pay the tax, and now we're fining you and we're charging you interest, and on and on and on, regardless of whether you thought you were getting good advice. So what is the conclusion of that? In my opinion, the best thing to do as a user is to start by doing your research using the LLM. Use Chat GPT, use Grok, use Gemini, etc., and get some questions answered. And this is obviously not in my best interest because, you know, somebody could come and obviously book a call with me and chat, and that would cost them money and we would make money and things like that. But the truth is just that is to some extent becoming more obsolete. It is usually better to do your initial research with the LLM and then to go and have that confirmed by experts. So this kind of will save you a bunch of time. This will save you a bunch of energy. There are a bunch of things that will not come up if you're looking at the LLM. So for example, I find that when doing international structuring, they don't tend to consider banking, and they don't have very good information on banking because of the fact that the data from LLMs is mostly data on the internet, and kind of real world experience in that regard is weak. So that's sort of a blind spot that it will have, and it will come and it will say, oh, you should do X, Y, Z. And I'm like, well, hang on, it's impossible to bank in that situation. And it's like, oh, yeah, you're right. It's difficult to bank in that situation, da, 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 right? So that throws it off a little bit. But this being said, it is going to give you like a certain halo of it pretty well. It also is a bit lazy. So if you come and you tell it, all right, I want you to research for me all the possible countries that meet XYZ criteria that I can form a trust. It'll do like 5 of them and be like, here are these options. And you're like, no, I wanted you to do all of them. And sometimes you even re-ask it, and it will come back with kind of a similar list, et cetera. So unless you're really digging into it and saying, well, hang on a minute, I want you to include this country, this country, this country, this country, there's a bunch that it will miss out on. And so that's another thing that will slightly throw it off. This being said, quite good. It seems to be much, much better about citing sources now. You can still use the same thing that I was mentioning before of ultimately going back to the law, and you 100% should. You 100% should never trust the LLM as a last authority, but I think it's a really great starting point. So I hope that helps. If you have any questions, please reach out to us, put the comments below. And if you have sort of some plan, some theory, et cetera, that you would like to get validated, if you'd like to think, hey, is there a better solution for me, then by all means, reach out to us. Again, you can book a call with me, and I will look forward to seeing you on the next video.